Hostiles is a new revisionist western film from director Scott Cooper that reteams him with star Christian Bale after they did the film Out of the Furnace, which is a film that I didn't see. I remember when it came out, I just thought it looked like a generic action thriller, so I didn't bother seeing it. Apparently it's supposed to have been pretty good, and so they reteamed together with this film, this new kind of really kind of cool revisionist western looking film, and I've been really looking forward to seeing this film. It's one of the films that I really wanted to check out back at the London Film Festival last year, but it wasn't showing at any of the festivals that I went to that I could go to, so I had to wait on this film. But it's finally been released about a week or so ago here in the UK, and I finally got the chance to actually go out and see this film, and I have to say it was definitely worth the wait. Now, this isn't going to be a film for everyone. Not everyone has loved this film. It's been predominantly a positive response, but not everyone has come out loving this film. Some people have not liked it. It's not worked for everyone. I can totally understand why as well. This is a film that isn't going to be for everyone. It's not a traditional classic western. It's not a commercial mainstream film at all, so I can totally understand why there are a lot of people that aren't taken to this film. But for me personally, it really worked. I thought this film was just a bleak and brutal masterpiece. Now, it's not often I say something like that. I rarely ever call a film a masterpiece. I even hesitate to call this film a masterpiece. I rarely ever use that word. The last time I said that about a film was like over a year ago for Moonlight. And, I don't like calling a film a masterpiece, just after I've seen it, because you never know, in 5-10 years time I look back and go, well, it actually wasn't that great. It hasn't aged that well. It's hard to call a film like a modern classic when it's only just come out. You really need to wait a few years before you can look back and see, actually, is that film a classic? Has it held up? Is that film as good as I remember it being? But this film just left me so speechless. It was one of those films like Moonlight that I saw just over a year ago, actually, where it just floored me, and as the film came to a close and it came to an end, I was just left speechless. I didn't know what to think. Now, it's a film that, as it first started, and for a large majority of the runtime, I was thinking, you know what, this is a good solid film, but it hasn't really blown me away. But it's not until we really got to the end of the film and it came to a close, I was like, you know what, I really like that, and I think it really works. So it is a film that demands a lot of patience from you as a viewer. I really feel like I have to stress that. It is a very slow moving film. It's very much a slow burner, this, like really slow moving. It's just over 2 hours, I think, but it does feel really long, and it is a throwback to those kind of really, drawn out, sweeping epic films. It's not a traditional shoot 'em out, woohoo, yeehaw, kind of really fun cowboy western film, but it is like a classic film in the sense that it is this grand sweeping epic dealing with these big universal themes, and it is a very kind of long feeling kind of slow moving film. So if you don't like films that are really slow moving, this probably isn't the film for you. Some people actually even got up and left, but I feel like if you are patient enough, and if you go with it, it is worth it in the end. It's one of those films that it requires a lot of patience from you as a viewer, but if you do stick with it and go with it, I think it is worth it in the long run, because it was for me. For a long time I was thinking, you know what, this film is a little bit slow moving, I probably do have some issues here as far as the pacing is concerned, but as the film came to an end, in hindsight, looking back over the film, I thought, you know what, I really like what they did there. I really like that they went with a more of a slow paced, slow moving kind of film, and I think it actually really worked. One of the best things about this film was that I really liked how the director Scott Cooper kind of blended these two different styles with one another. It was very much a classical film, like I said, in a way, in that it was this grand, sweeping, slow moving, epic kind of western film, and it had all the kind of classic western iconography there, all the codes and conventions you'd expect from a classic western film, but at the same time it was a very kind of modern, revisionist, kind of edgy film, in that it was intense and very kind of visual and realistic at times. It very much reminded me of The Revenant in that respect, and that was kind of a very kind of revisionist, kind of intensely kind of visual and realistic film, even though it was kind of technically a western. It was a very different kind of western, a lot more edgy, a lot more, visual and intense, and this film very much has that same kind of feeling to it, where it's like a classic western that's reminiscent almost of like a True Grit or a 310 to Yuma, but combining that classic western iconography you would get from a western film with that intense visual realism that was kind of reminiscent of The Revenant for me. And I really like that combination. It's not going to work for everyone, fans of classic traditional westerns might not love it, because it does have that iconography there that you'd expect, and it does very much feel like a western film, but it also is very kind of revisionist, and it is very modern, it is very edgy, it is very visceral, and it is very intense and really quite gripping. So it's kind of like two different things mashed together, but for me it was a blend that really worked. It really blew me away in that respect, because I really didn't know what to expect going into this film. I knew it was going to be different. I knew it wasn't just going to be some just generic film that we've seen a million times before, but I really wasn't expecting this. And like I said, the best way I can put it is that you just take classic iconography from the western films of the golden age and combine that with just the intense visceral realism you get in a film like The Revenant, and you combine those together, you get Hostiles, and that's what I loved so much about this film. And also, I can't do a review of this film and not talk about the performances. Christian Bale in this film, as always, is just absolutely fantastic. He's one of my favourite actors working today. He's like one of my top 3 favourite actors currently working in the business. I think he's amazing, and he's a real kind of chameleon of an actor where he can always just completely immerse himself into the character he's playing and really disappear. He's a really great character actor. He really just becomes the person he's playing, whether it's kind of Bruce Wayne and Batman in Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, whether it's Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, or whether it's what he does here in this film. He really just becomes the character he plays, and you really buy him in that role, and it doesn't feel like you're watching an actor performing or playing up for the camera. It very much feels like you're watching a real person. He's such a versatile actor who's so great at playing such different characters so convincingly, to the point where you genuinely believe you're watching that real person and you're not watching an actor. And Christian Bale once again knocks it out of the park. I probably would nominate him. I don't know if this is the kind of film that is going to get a ton of nominations, because like I said, not everyone has loved it. It's not been for everyone that everyone's taken to this film, but for me, I would nominate this film. I would nominate Christian Bale. I think he was spectacular in this film. He really knocked it out of the park, and it was a really quite tough, heavy role as well. I feel like I have to say that about this film as well. It is a very heavy, very brutal and intense film, and a lot of that comes from Christian Bale and his character. I mean, there is some compassion, there is some humanity there. You can understand where he's coming from, but at the same time, it is a very kind of brutal character he's playing in terms of the things that he's done in the past and the things that he's experienced and the things that he's kind of grappling with. It is a very heavy, intense role in a very kind of heavy and intense film, but I think he really smashed it. He really immersed himself into the kind of the mindset of that character, and he was so convincing and so powerful in that role. So yeah, I mean, everyone else as well. Christian Bale was the standout, but Rosamund Pike, I'm not the biggest fan of Rosamund Pike, aside from Gone Girl, on which I thought she was fantastic in that movie. I'm not the biggest fan of her as an actress, but she was really good in this movie, and all the Native American cast as well, led by Studi, I think is his name, as the main chief there that they're taken across the border to take back to his homeland. There's this Native American chief who's been imprisoned. They're taking him back to his homeland because he's dying now, escorting him and his family back to their homeland. Christian Bale is leading this expedition, as it were, and yeah, I think that all the actors in the movie were really great, despite some of them not having that big roles. And reminds me of another thing I have to talk about. What I really liked and really appreciated about this film, that really kind of struck me as the film went on, and especially as it came to an end, was that every character had a really great arc, no matter how big or small the role they played. And I really appreciated the kind of emotional journeys that all these characters go on, together across the story in this movie. They all had really great arcs. They all had really great kind of emotional journeys that you could really get invested in. They were all on this journey together physically, but also kind of emotionally and psychologically as well. And it was really great that even these characters that didn't have massive roles still had a really great arc and a really great journey that you could follow in terms of where they started off at the beginning and where they ended up toward the end of their journey in the movie. And I really appreciate that, because you don't often get that in movies, where every character, no matter how small the role that they play, every character has a really great arc and a really great journey for you as an audience member to follow and track, across their time in the movie. And I just really like that. It's a small thing, really, because like a lot of the characters don't have massive roles, but I really admired and really appreciated that each character had a really great arc and a really great journey in this movie, and I thought that was really fantastically well done. And one last thing I have to mention is that I loved how this film dealt with and explored these really big, really kind of heavy universal themes. Like, it's dealing with PTSD, it's dealing with the concept of revenge, it's dealing with, tragedy, it's dealing with grief and loss and forgiveness. These were really big universal themes and concepts that I thought were really well tackled and explored in this film through the prisms of these characters and what they're going through and what they're experiencing. It wasn't too on the nose, it wasn't too kind of like over the top. They were all dealt with and explored in a very kind of grounded and subtle yet powerful way, and it really hit me as an audience member, and especially some of the stuff that Christian Bale's character is going through, and all his interactions with his fellow soldiers, and his back and forth, and his kind of journey that he goes on with this Native American chief as well, where at the beginning he's just filled with rage and anger and hate, and you can kind of understand why. But I love that as this film goes on and as the story unfolds, they begin to kind of form a bond in a certain way, and it's about kind of almost forgiving your enemy, and it's like this revenge tragedy, this epic revenge tragedy, but it's also dealing with themes of, like I said, grief, loss, also forgiveness, and for me it really worked. And also, like I said, how the film follows these characters on and these journeys that they go on in terms of where they start off and where they end up, and how it's very much, their journeys in the film are very much kind of connected to these themes that the film is exploring. I just think it was done in a really great, really powerful and effective way that I found really satisfying as an audience member. As this film came to a close, I was like, you know what, I love that. I don't really have any issue with this film. Sure, it was slow paced and it was slow moving, but if you stick with it and go with it, especially as the film comes to an end, for me anyway, I found it a really satisfying, just really kind of emotionally fulfilling experience that really worked for me. I thought it was just a really powerful film. And so bring this to an end now. Hostiles for me was an absolutely fantastic film. It really floored me. I thought it was really great. And it's not going to be for everyone. Like, there are some things about this movie that's going to turn a lot of people off. It is quite a kind of dark, bleak, brutal film, but I really like films like that. And yeah, it was a bit heavy, it was a bit intense, but I think it was done, masterfully well, really well directed, really well acted, dealing with these really big, powerful themes that I thought were put across in a really effective way that really hit me. And as the film came to a close, I found it to be a really emotionally satisfying experience. It was slow paced, it was a slow burner, but for me it really worked. I really like this film, so overall I'm going to give Hostiles 5 stars. Like I said, if you're not the biggest fan of really kind of dark, heavy, intense, violence, visceral films, this probably isn't going to be for you. But if you do like those kind of films, I think you will really like it and will really appreciate it, because I really did. I just thought it was just a bleak, brutal epic that really took my breath away. And so there we have it. That wraps up my review of Hostiles. Have you seen the film yet? I'd be really interested to know what you think if you have the chance to check it out yet. Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, if you like this and you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to see more. And if you missed my last review, be sure to go ahead and click over here to catch up on my last review, or perhaps down here to catch up on one of my recent videos. But with that said, I've been David O'Sullivan. I'll see you next time.